Hello, vinyl community. It's Dwayne Rock and Doc here with another YouTube video. I was in Saskatoon just over a week ago. I went there to see a band from Portland, Oregon called the Bridge City Sinners. And they were a band that I was going to go see in May of 2020 at the same bar. But unfortunately, COVID hit and everything got canceled. So took 3 years for them to come back, but thankfully they did and played the show at that same bar. And what an amazing show that was. I took the covers from all three of their albums with me to get signed. And there's the first one, a CD. I don't believe this one's ever been released on vinyl. This is their second album. It's called Here's to the Devil. That's a picture of the band in the back, although not everyone in this picture was at that show in Saskatoon that I saw. Their upright bass player was there, banjo player, fiddle player, and resonator guitar player, and their front person, Libby Lux, on vocals, and she plays a small banjo. And this is their latest album, Unholy Hymns, and it was released last year, I believe. And that's the back cover, which is also the shirt I got from them, has that on it. I don't know how well you can see that. It says Bridge City Sinners on the bottom. But I was kind of debating. They had like about 6 different designs, and there was one that had that design in the front and the tour dates on the back, and I was going to get that one because I like to get shirts with the tour dates. But I decided to get this one because this one's kind of a special one. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's brown streaks throughout it. There's a whole bunch in the back. But these are hand bleached, so every shirt would be a slightly different, so no two shirts would be the same. So for that reason, I decided to get this shirt, and I do like this logo too. But if you've not familiar with the Bridge City Sinners, they're I guess you could probably describe them as a prohibition swing, jazz, death folk kind of band with a punk attitude. And I'll try and leave a link below for so you can check them out, see what they're like. There was 2 other bands also playing. A band from Saskatoon that I don't know anything about called the No-Go's, and they were really good. They were more on the punkier side. And then a second band from Edmonton that I really liked. I thought they were great. So I picked up their latest album. They're called The Devil's Sons, and their latest is called Broken Bones, Hearts, and Bottles. And like I said, they were awesome. And little insert lyric sheet with old school tattoo flash on there. And look at those guys in the band. Serious looking guys. Anyways, they were. I was talking to one of the guys, and he said that they were going down east. They were going to play a show in Toronto with the Bridge City Sinners, and then they were going on to Montreal to play some kind of festival in Montreal. So I'm hoping when they get back to Edmonton, I'll maybe this summer get a chance to go see him again in Edmonton. and take my grandson with me because he just turned 18 a little while ago. So now he can legally get into the bars in Alberta. Can't in Saskatchewan because you have to be 19 for Saskatchewan. But anyways, when I was in Saskatoon, I stopped at my two favorite record stores in Saskatoon, the Vinyl Diner and the Vinyl Exchange. And might have mentioned in one of my other videos, the Record Store Day one, that one of the titles I was looking for in Record Store Day was the Donna's early singles Record Store Day release, which I looked for in Edmonton at 4 different stores, and none of them had it. So on the Monday after Record Store Day, I phoned Vinyl Diner to see if they had any copies, and the guy there said, "Yeah, I have 1 copy left." I said, "Great, put it away for me," which he did, and I picked it up when I was there. And this is a compilation of their early singles. There's 14 tracks on this that didn't appear on any of their LPs, and the second side of the album has all cover versions. There's covers of Kiss, Sweet, Alice Cooper, and REO Speedwagon. And of course, as you can tell, they're an all-female punk band, or they started out that way. Nowadays, they're more of a hard rock band, but I was very glad to get this. Also picked up this one from The Haunted. This is their self-titled debut album, originally out in 1967, but this is a 2021 reissue, and they're a kind of a garagey psych band from Montreal. And if you ever want to get an original copy of this, be ready to pay lots of money, because the originals are really hard to find now. And these guys were active from the mid-60s to 1971. Also got the second album from Stackwaddy called Bugger Off. I do have their first one too. This is a 2020 reissue, originally released in 1972. It's their second album. They're a raw British blues rock band, and they were signed to John Peel's label. And they were active from the mid-60s to 1973. And if you're into stuff like the early Pretty Things or Downliner Set, I think you'll like these guys. They're pretty raw, but they still rock. And the reason that they're kind of like very raw is they didn't like to run through songs before recording or rehearse, or they didn't like to do overdubs, and they recorded live right off the floor, usually first takes. Still a great album though, highly recommended. And the interesting story about the title of this record is John Peel was in the studio while they were recording this album, and he suggested they do some overdubs, and their response was, "Bugger off, John." So that's apparently how they got the title for this record. Then I got some 60s stuff. This is John Fred and his Playboy Band. From 1967, this is their second album, called Agnes Strange. And they originally formed in 1956. And they're more of a blue-eyed soul, R&B beat pop kind of band, but they had that hit single called Judy in Disguise with Glasses, which was more of a bubblegum kind of poppy song. But because it I think it went to number one in a lot of countries. Uh, they became perceived as a bubblegum pop novelty band, and because of that number one hit, and so they shortly after that, at the end of the '60s, they split up. But despite that song, it's still and that song I love that song too. But this album isn't in that same vein. Like I said, it's more of a blue-eyed soul kind of album. There's a song listing on the back. And a picture that doesn't have anything to do with the band. Also picked this one up. Niles Lofgren, when he was in the band Grin. And I hadn't intended actually, I wasn't looking for this album, but they were playing it in the store when I was there and I really liked it, so I asked him if I could buy it. And this is his 1+1 album, and that one was released in 1971. And this is actually a 1976 UK reissue. It's a double album that has the 1+1 album and the self-titled Grin album. Here's a look at the inside jacket, picture of the band on the back. Oops, on the back, that's the original debut album, just called Grin. And he went on after Grin and released a handful of solo albums in the 70s. And then after that he went on to play on and off with Neil Young and Crazy Horse. And he also played with Bruce Springsteen. And this album, I don't know much about it. I haven't heard much of his solo stuff. But this album is kind of a catchy hard rock with a bit of country rock in it. And if you've watched any of my older videos, you know how much I really, really like compilation albums. Well, I picked up a couple more while I was in Saskatoon. This one is another one of those UK record label samplers. It's the Probe record label. If you saw, I think it was my last one, I did showed you some UK record label samplers that I had picked up. And I showed you one from the Probe label. This is another one from 1972. It's called Spirit of Rock. And again, these are samplers that have a lot of well-known bands on them that everybody should know. Bands like Steppenwolf, Joe Walsh, Three Dog Night, Steely Dan, B.B. King, Ray Charles, and then there's a couple others. Then I also got this comp. This one's called The Big Itch, Volume 6. And this one is, I think, another one of those unofficial series. There's, I believe, 8 in total. This is the only one I have so far. If it's good, I'll probably be looking for the rest of them. But it's one of those samplers, the kind that I really like, with a collection of obscure 45s from the 50s and 60s. Usually mainly 50s rock and roll, surf, garage, and frat house rock. And there's a back cover with pictures of the 45s and a list of the bands there. And when I looked on the list, I think there was only actually one band on there that I was familiar with at all. Then if you remember, again, I think it was my last video, I talked about Katrina and the Waves. I picked up 2 albums last time, their second album and their third, called Waves. This is their first album, well, sort of. This is a self-titled album. Uh, Came out in 1985. This is the U.S. issue. So it was in the U.S. It was their debut. They released 2 albums in Canada. Their first one was self-titled, just like this one, but it had a different cover. But there's a little blurb on the back here, and it just says that this is the U.S. debut LP featuring brand new studio re-recordings from tracks that were originally on their first 2 Canadian LPs. So supposedly they re-recorded them. And this, of course, has their big hit, Walking on Sunshine. And I picked up a couple of power pop albums. Greg Kihn. This one is his second album from 1977. And I also got this one, Contagious. This one's from 1984. And he's in the melodic pop, power pop vein. And he was one of the first artists to be signed to Berserkly Records. I don't know if you can see that, but Berserkly at the time was a great label for power pop. And I told you about, I think on the last video, the story how Berserkly started. So, of course, Earthquake were on Berserkly because it was their money that started the label. But I think, that, like I said, he was one of their first signings other than Earthquake. Got Hookfoot. This is I think it's their 4th album because it says 4th here in the corner here, called Roaring. And I believe this is the only Hookfoot album I'm missing from my collection. It came out in 1974. They're kind of just a straight-ahead British rock band, actually made up of session players. So they weren't that popular or well-known, I guess is more the better word, well-known, especially I think in North America. But they were active from 69 to 74, and they were also the backing band on some of Elton John's early LPs. And more 60s stuff. Didn't know who these guys are, but I saw it at Vinyl Express in Saskatoon when I was there. Oh, sorry, getting the name all wrong. There's a lot of vinyl names that I buy from, but it's the Vinyl Exchange in Saskatoon. And I just saw the cover and I liked it, and it's, England's newest singing sensation. And this, I think, is their debut. They had, I think they only had 2 LPs out. This is from 1965. They're a British beat pop kind of band that formed in 65, and then they disbanded due to management problems in 1966. And when I was reading about that, it didn't say what the problems were, but usually when groups have management problems, it's because the management, their manager is stealing their money. So that could be the reason they split up. Anyways, the Hullabaloos, it's just self-titled. And more 60s stuff. I picked this up from a fellow in Saskatoon called Nick. I'd seen it on his Facebook page and sent him a little message that I wanted this one. So this is Ohio Express, their second album called Chewy Chewy, which was released in 1968. They were, they're one of those kind of fake bands them and I think a couple other bands that were on the Buddha label were more made up bands. Them and a band like 1910 Fruit Gum Company were actually studio musicians that played the music, and the guys on the cover may not have actually even played on the album. And each band had apparently had members, touring band, and the members in those bands again might not have even played on the record. But they're still really, if you're into that kind of thing, I really like bubblegum pop, so I'm still looking. I think they have 3 other albums. This is the first one I've ever found. And the 1910 Fruit Gum Company, I think now I have the complete collection from them. So still looking for the rest of Ohio Express. And when I was there in Saskatoon, I hooked up with a friend of mine named Kevin. He was at the Edmonton Music Collectors show when I was there. He actually had a table right next to mine. And I did buy some stuff from him that I showed you last time. But I went over to his place and looked through some stuff and got a few more things. Got this one, Reckless Eric. This is a double, I guess you could say a best of album. It's called Big Smash. And this is his 3rd album. It was released in 1980. Inside jacket has a collage of a bunch of pictures of the band and stuff. And here's the track listings on the back. And he was unhappy, really unhappy. He was on the Stiff Records roster, but apparently he was getting really frustrated with the way that Stiff was conducting business and promotions. So after this album, he left Stiff Records. And again, I got another compilation. This one's called All Good Clean Fun. It's another UK record sampler from United Artists that came out in 1971. Kind of an interesting, it's got a little envelope kind of thing, and the records pull out. And then it's got a little booklet here. Gives you a little blurb on all the bands. And again, this is another one that's mostly bands that everybody should be familiar with. Eric Burton and War is on here, so are Man and Groundhogs, Canned Heat, Sugarloaf, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, and a few other bands. So there's the track listing. That's the stuff that I got in Saskatoon. Oh, there's one more thing. Sorry, I put it away. I forgot to take it out. This I also got from Kevin. The original UK pressing of the Cramps Goo Goo Muck single. And this one's on yellow vinyl. And the Cramps had a little bit of a resurgence this year due to the TV show Wednesday. She does a dance scene in one of those, and Goo Goo Muck is the song that's playing. So great that maybe people that weren't familiar with the Cramps get to know who they are. There's the back cover. They also do She Said. So that's it. That was my trip to Saskatoon. And I'll try and put down below, I'll try and put a link for some Bridge City Center stuff. And also down below, if you liked what you saw, please hit the subscribe button. And you might want to hit the notification button too, so you can find out when I'm going to do another video. They'll let you know that I've done one. So anyways, that's it. I might be doing another one soon. I got some stuff on the way from Europe. Anyways, thanks for watching. Stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.